politics, protests, human rights, justice, equity, community. RaceAware. Throughout the 20th century, the federal government, usually the Federal Department of Narcotics or the Federal Bureau of Investigations, have harassed many men and women of color under the guise of being subversive. This was also seen notably during the McCarthy Hearings on Communism during the 1950s. Today, we'll look at 3 different women that our federal government looked at with suspicion, distrust, and even considered them seditionists. Along with this, we'll take a look at the role of white privilege, and specifically the lack of any privilege among our 3 women. White privilege was power, whether intentional or not. Hello, and this is the second episode of RaceAware Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Wilise Richey, along with my co-host, Tony Szynski.
Hello.
And Dan Sauber.
Hi.
We're aiming to reveal little-known histories, historical whitewashing, resulting governmental and corporate policies, and the ongoing impact of unchecked misinformation. So, guys, what do we have for our listeners today?
Today we've got the history of 3 different women, starting out with one that many people are very familiar with, Marilyn Monroe, or as she was known as, a blonde bombshell. She was born June 1st, 1926. Her cause of death was barbiturate overdose. Her death was listed as probable suicide on August 5th, 1962 in Los Angeles. Her younger years, she was reared by 2 successive sets of foster parents. Her films grossed more than $200 million, and all of this out of a girl that dropped out of school at the age of 15.
Wow.
Doing this bio that most people know the life and death of Marilyn Monroe, how many knew the real stories of women like Billie Holiday and Ma Rainey and Frida Kahlo? It wasn't the similarities that struck me with Miss Monroe, but the differences. She was courted by people in high places, while Billie Holiday was harassed and hunted down by our government. What struck me was the power of white privilege, intentional or not.
And now we're going to look at the quick backstory of Frida Kahlo. Most people are familiar with Frida Kahlo in the art world as being a famous Mexican artist. Frida was born in 1907 in the home of her parents in Mexico City. By the way, her dad emigrated from Germany to Mexico.
Oh, that's interesting.
Frida was fluent in Spanish, French, and German, yet because of the relationship with her father, she barely spoke German at home, causing a major rift between her and her dad.
Oh, is it because she didn't want to speak German, or they just didn't get along, so she didn't want to speak German?
As she was growing up and as she became ill, a lot of friction occurred, a lot of stress financially with the family occurred, and there was a lot of impact between her and her dad. And so she dropped the German and only speaks Spanish to her father.
Oh, wow. Wow.
But she was fluent. She was fluent in 3 languages.
Most people can't even speak the English language, right?
Correct. So at the age of 6, Frida fell ill with polio, causing her right leg to remain shorter than the other, which resulted in massive bullying. And she endured that through her entire childhood and teenage years. At the age of 18, in 1925, she was involved in a tragic accident. The streetcar crashed into the bus she was traveling in.
Wow.
The consequences to her person were grave. Several bones were fractured. Her spinal cord was damaged. And while immobilized for several months, Frida began to paint.
Wow.
So basically, her painting career came about as a way of occupational therapy and to pass some time while she was recovering.
Yeah, she ended up discovering a talent that she had. Had it not been for the accident, she probably may not have realized that.
Right. As such, she had a natural talent for painting. She became known within the Mexico City art world, and met many famous artists and muralists, including Diego Rivera, who at the time was the top muralist in Mexico, and they married in 1929.
Okay.
In 1930, she suffered her first miscarriage. As was common at the time, and probably still goes on today, her husband was a bit of a dog and had a lot of infidelities, causing a lot of emotional crisis. And Frida divorced him in 1939, only to remarry him a year later.
Oh, wow. She went back for second.
The main reason that she divorced him was he had an affair with her younger sister.
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
that would do it.
That's another show altogether.
Yeah. When they decided to come back together, she made it very clear that they were going to lead separate lives. Mm-hmm. He could sleep with whoever he wanted to sleep with, and she'd sleep with whoever she wanted to sleep with. And a lot of people don't realize Frida was also bisexual. Oh. The husband, Diego, had no problem with her sleeping with men, but he did not like her sleeping with women. So there was a lot of drama with all of this. She remained intensely an active artist, and at the time, she became very political and was a member of the Communist Party and the faithful left-wing activists. Now, the house that her parents owned was affectionately known as the Blue House. Okay. Together with her husband, they refurbished it, and they used that refurbished home to provide asylum for Leon Trotsky and his wife, Natalia, further growing their ties to communism and socialism. Okay. This went on the rest of her life. She was a noted socialist and communist, and even a few days before her death, on her gurney, she participated in a protest march. An ambulance arrived with her on her gurney. They took her off the gurney. She spoke, and that was so much stress placed on her that she died a few days later. Wow, that's commitment. And that was that was a protest march for the coup that overthrew the Guatemalan president Arbenez at the time. And she suffered pulmonary embolism as a result of that, and causing her death. That's amazing. Now, at the end of her life, when her health deteriorated, she remained confined in a hospital for 3 years. Her leg was amputated, and she died at the Blue House in 1954. The U.S. government considered her subversive all the way up through as recently as 2019, when under the Trump administration, the U.S. ambassador to Mexico slammed her in a tweet as being a proponent of socialism and being against America, causing a major rift between the policies and politics of the United States and Mexico at the time. He died at the Blue House in Mexico City on July 13th, 1954. Wow, that's a fascinating story. Both of those stories are fascinating. Well, on the other side of the break, we're going to take a look at Billie Holiday, and we're also going to discuss some possible reasons for the federal government's interference in these women's personal lives and their work. Stay with us. RaceAware.